While big cities and towns get numerous visitors on a daily basis, there is a world of small towns, villages, and communities that have lesser-known stories. Many of these areas have disturbing tales to tell, but get little to no visitors because of their location, their residents, or because of how creepy the area is in general. So that's what we're going to be having a look at today. So here are 7 creepy small towns from around the world. Number 1. Colma, California. Colma was a small community that was formed in the 19th century. It originally began with just a few residents and business owners, and although the population grew slightly, it remained relatively small as only around 1,500 people live there today. However, while there may not be a large population of living people in Colma, there is a huge population of dead people. In 1900, San Francisco passed a new law that essentially forbid anybody from being buried within the city limits. Of course, people had already been buried there, so they needed to be moved swiftly. Colma was chosen as a resting site for these corpses because of its space, its rural location, and its rich agricultural landscape. So between the years of 1920 and 1941, over 150,000 bodies were transported to Colma. In 1924, the town was officially declared a necropolis, which is the opposite of a metropolis and derives from an ancient Greek phrase which means city of the dead. While friends and family members visit Colma to pay respects to their loved ones, tourism to the actual town is scarce due to its size and dark image. Number 2. Nagate, Japan. Nagate is a small village in the Tokushima prefecture in Japan that only has a population of around 30 people. However, in earlier years, the population was closer to 300 inhabitants. When most of the population left, the village felt very empty, and in an attempt to bring some life to it, Tsukimi Ayano created hundreds of life-sized dolls and placed them in the village. Many of these dolls were modeled off the village's former residents, and they were placed in every corner of the village, from the river to the bus shelters, even the village's school, which was abandoned in 2012. Ayano was successful in her mission, and tourism actually did increase after these dolls were created, and even though many people find their presence to be creepy, they also find them to be strangely charming. Unfortunately, the village is in a mountainous, remote area of Japan, so not many people are willing to go there, but more and more people are finding out about the area, so it wouldn't be surprising to see tourism increase even more. Number 3. Pluckley, England. Pluckley is a small village in Kent, England that has a long history spanning hundreds of years. This history helped fuel the rumor that Pluckley was haunted, and over the last century, these rumors have become well known and many people believe it to be true. In fact, in 1989, the Guinness World Book of Records named Pluckley the most haunted village in England, and since then, ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, and many popular TV shows have visited the town to try and find some kind of evidence that these rumors were true. Many strange photographs and videos have come from this village, and while the area is visited by believers and skeptics alike, people who are more superstitious tend to steer clear of the area. Of course, this could all be nothing but fictional folklore, but the stories that the locals tell are probably worth listening to. Number 4. Miracle Village, Florida. Miracle Village is the nickname given to a small community of people east of Pahokee, Florida, that is essentially in the middle of nowhere. The nearest supermarket is a 40-minute drive away, its surroundings are nothing but miles of fields, and the area has been labeled as the place where no tourist ever goes. Well, there is a reason for the rural nature of this community, as Miracle Village is a safe haven for registered sex offenders. The complex was bought by Richard Withrow, who was a minister who worked in prisons for over 30 years and believed that the punishment for sex offenders was counterproductive. He created Miracle Village as a sanctuary to offenders who had nowhere else to go, and soon, the numbers of this community began to grow. By 2017, the number of residents, including families, had grown to over 200, and Miracle Village became the largest community of sex offenders in the United States. Obviously, this area has spawned an immense amount of controversy for the empathetic way they treat sex offenders, so the area is completely private and isn't accessible to the public. Of course, nobody goes there anyways, but even if they did and tried to enter the community, they would probably be swiftly turned away.
Dawson moved here in February. he admits, despite the isolation and the fact that he's been unmoored from the support of his family, he's found a home in Miracle Village.
My neighbor is a sex offender. My best friend's a sex offender now. I feel more safe than I could ever be anywhere else, right here. It gives other people who have a label as sex offender a chance to give back in a normal environment.
His neighbor Chad Stoffel says even after sex offenders do the time, they still pay for their crime.
I think the biggest challenge is just that scarlet letter that's tattooed to your forehead.
The 37-year-old former music teacher is on probation for inappropriately touching one of his male students.
Number 5. OrleanssurGlane France. OrleanssurGlane is a small commune in west-central France that has a dark history. In June of 1944, a division of Nazi soldiers were informed that one of their men had been captured and was being held captive in OrleanssurGlane. The reaction from the soldiers was brutal, as they killed 642 of the village's inhabitants in what became known as the OrleanssurGlane massacre. The village was almost completely destroyed by the soldiers who burned down the barns where the local men were locked inside of and blew up the village's church, which is where the women and children were locked inside of. What was left of the village was abandoned by the survivors of the massacre for obvious reasons, and after the war, General Charles de Gaulle stated that the village should never be rebuilt, but instead left abandoned as a reminder of the cruelty that was inflicted on the innocent locals. A nearby village was eventually built and given the same name, but the former village is still a haunting sight for anyone who decides to visit. Number 6. Nemea Japan. Nemea was a town in the Fukushima prefecture of Japan that, in 2010, had a population of over 20,000 people. However, in March of 2011, the town was hit with multiple disasters, beginning with the massive Tohoku earthquake that was followed by a large tsunami. Immediately after this, the nearby nuclear power plant shut down and exploded, causing the entire town of Nemea to be evacuated. The area was essentially a ghost town for a number of years, and residents were unable to return due to the radioactive levels of the town. However, in 2017, these restrictions were lifted on part of the town, but around half of the residents did not return. Today, the area is still quite haunting due to the abandoned buildings and the quiet streets, but decontamination work is being done on the town and a lot of rebuilding is in process, so hopefully this area can get back to the way it once was. Number 7. Hildale, Utah. Hildale is an area in Utah that is actually considered to be a city, but with its small population of around 3,000 people and its rural location, most people consider it to be a town or even just a small community. It is an extremely controversial area as it is the home to the headquarters of the FLDS Church, which is a Mormon fundamentalist community that practices polygamy, meaning people in the community will be married to numerous partners at once. Because of the way the FLDS Church treats its members, it has been labeled as a cult and eerily fits the description of one. Its members idolize whoever is the leader at the time and will treat him like a god. The women in the community wear basic, minimalistic clothing and are given tasks that would likely be given to a housewife in the 19th century. The group has been called regressive and backwards, so it's not that surprising that people avoid this area like the plague. Most of the police, government officials, and people of power in the town are also members of the FLDS Church, so if anybody who disagrees with their methods happens to be in their town, they're more than likely in for a bad time.
This is the hidden world of the FLDS, one of the largest polygamous groups in the United States, and the kingdom of their leader, the now jailed Warren Jeffs. It doesn't take long to get the message. We are not welcome here.
Did they do that because of us?
Yeah.
That's because we're riding with two of his biggest enemies, his own flesh and blood.
My name is Matthew Wall Jeffs.
My name is Zachariah Barlow Jeffs.
The imprisoned leader's own nephews have now turned against their uncle and everything he stands for. They've returned to help others leave the FLDS, which still has as many as 10,000 members dedicated to the practice of polygamy.
And that's it for this video. Thanks a million for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. I will leave all of the footage used, sources, and music down in the description as always. I try and make a creepy video like this one every single week, so if you want to subscribe for that, you can. All of my social medias will be linked down below if you want to follow me over there. But like I said, that's all for now. As always, until next time.